Dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. This is Srimad Bhagavatam class. Be going over Canto 3, Chapter 33, Verse 22 today. Just wanted to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak something on this nectarian Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and this verse today that we have is very beautiful and very relevant for all of us to really meditate upon. So with that being said, we'll start with our verse. And are you able to see my screen, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So we'll start reading the verse. Tam eva dhyayati devam apatyam kapilam harim babhuva chirato vatsa nispriha tadrishe grihe. तमेव ध्यायति देवम् अपत्यं कपिलं हरिं बभूवा चिरतो वत्सा निःस्पृहा तादृशे गृहे तमेव ध्यायति देवम् अपत्यं कपिलं हरिं बभूवा चिरतो वत्सा निःस्पृहा तादृशे गृहे. Synonyms, translation, and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Tam, upon him, eva, certainly, dhyayati, meditating, devam, divine, apatyam, son, kapilam, Lord Kapila, harim, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, babhuva, became, achirataha, very soon, vatsa, oh dear Vidura, nispriha, unattached, tadrishe grihe, to such a home. Translation: O Vidura, thus always meditating upon her son, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapil Deva, she very soon became unattached to her nicely decorated home. Purport. Here's a practical example of how one can elevate oneself in spiritual advancement by Krishna consciousness. Kapil Deva is Krishna, and he appeared as the son of Devahuti. After Kapil Deva left home, Devahuti was absorbed in the thought of him, and thus she was always Krishna conscious. Her constant situation in Krishna consciousness enabled her to be detached from hearth and home. Unless we are able to transfer our attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no possibility of becoming freed from material attachment. The Srimad Bhagavatam therefore confirms that it is not possible for one to become liberated by cultivation of empiric philosophical speculation. Simply knowing that one is not matter but spirit soul or Brahman does not purify one's intelligence. Even if the impersonalist reaches the highest platform of spiritual realization, he falls down again to material attachment because of not being situated in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The devotees adopt the devotional process, hearing about the Supreme Lord's pastimes and glorifying his activities, and thereby always remembering his beautiful eternal form. By rendering service, becoming his friend or his servant, and offering him everything that one possesses, one is able to enter into the kingdom of God. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, Tato mam tattvato jnatva. After discharging pure devotional service, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in fact, and thus one becomes eligible to enter into his association in one of the spiritual planets. So we'll start with prayers. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तु ते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hey, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, again, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak something on this wonderful transcendental literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's very nectarian, and this verse today is definitely very instructive. So I'll read the translation one more time. O Vidura, thus always meditating upon her son, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapil Deva, she very soon became unattached to her nicely decorated home. So, as I had mentioned, this verse is very instructive because, we all have this challenge and struggle in our spiritual life. How we really, how do we really and genuinely become free from all the material attachments and material life? And we understand, I don't know if anyone has tried, but we understand that just by forcing purposely, it doesn't work. It is very temporary when we force something upon ourselves. We can't take it, we can't do it for the long time. It's just very temporary. And we also, because of this, we need something very permanent that is a, lasting solution. And this verse exactly tells us how to do this. So by this verse, I really wanted to, I was meditating upon what I can talk about, and because this is very vast topic. So just wanted to really talk about two main takeaways that I really understood from this verse. And so first is, how instead of renouncing, all the things that we may have, if we just redirect all our possessions in serving the Lord, one can develop the pure devotional service to the Lord. So that's one of the takeaways. And the second takeaway that I have is how just by following the instructions of following the instructions of spiritual master, we can perfect our life. Because, here, Devahuti Mataji, Ma Devahuti, she actually, what she learned from Kapil Muni, she achieved perfection after following those instructions. So here so this part is like after giving all the instructions on bhakti and the Sankhya, Kapil Deva has left home. And, of course, this is a very crucial moment because generally when someone we love is separated, it causes a lot of grief. So, but we see here that Mother Devahuti, she used this separation eventually, and really, and eventually, meditating on the Lord, she has qualified for, she has created the gateway for her liberation in the same life. And Prabhupada, really explains this in this purport too, that simply knowing that one is not matter, but spirit, soul, or Brahman, does not purify one's intelligence. So we can have a lot of knowledge about, the spirit and the soul and who we are, but all of these things, just knowing all of these things, it won't give us that rasa, right? We'll just have this very heart, the heart that is like just very dry. So, Prabhupada also says that even the impersonalist reaches the highest platform of spiritual realization, but he falls down again to material attachment because of not being situated in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. So, and he also explains this, what this service means. What is this devotional service? So Prabhupada says that it is to hear about the Lord's pastimes, glorify his activities, and thus, always remembering his beautiful form. So this kind of, brings us to this first point that we're trying to understand here, that detachment to materialistic life only comes when we attach ourselves to the higher supreme. So for example, we all have, very beautiful homes. We have phones, like the latest and the greatest models sometimes. We have careers that we're, pursuing or working on. We have our relationships, in the home, as well as in the work everywhere, with devotees and, our specific identities. So we have all of this. And Prabhupada is explaining here that, it is not a problem to possess that all. The problem is when we depend on them for our happiness. So basically, when we're attached to these things, that is the cause of bondage. So when we attach ourselves to this opulence that we have, that's when we start to become, in the mentality of me and mine. So Mother Devahuti here teaches us that, we have to depend on Krishna, no matter what opulence we may have, understanding this is a mercy of the Lord. So, bhakti is really defined by our intentions and our consciousness, not with our just the work that we do or externally, right? So even here we see that Mother Devahuti, she did not leave the beautiful palace that has been built for her by Kapil Muni, right? She just attached herself in the thoughts of Kapil Muni. And Srila Prabhupada quotes here in this verse that, from Bhagavad Gita, Tato Mam Tattvato Jnatva. So, and this is from Bhagavad Gita 18.55. So only through devotional service one can understand Krishna as he is. And this is because when we perform devotional service, we start getting attached to Krishna and the service itself. And this automatically, gradually, lessens our attachment to the materialistic life. I know if you've, attended the classes, the second class just recently about the Shikshamrita from Srila Prabhupada that Premana, her Grace Premanand Mataji leads. It is very, sweet. It says that we have to get attached to this devotional service. The DT service is the topic that we're talking about. So when we start attaching ourselves to this, Krishna's services, this is when automatically our materialistic life lessens, because the time that we have, we're using it in the service of Krishna. Otherwise, I was just hearing a lecture yesterday about, it says that when we don't utilize our time for the service of Krishna, we are lessening our life. So it was very nicely explained that it is not that, if we don't do devotional service, if we're supposed to live 80 years, we're going to just live 70 years. It's not that. The thing, the point from that is that when we live for 80 years, how much of that time are we dedicating to the service of Krishna, to our, final goal? We all should have a goal of, in life. So when we have a goal, that is when we try to endeavor to reach that goal. We don't just think, okay, I want to go back to Godhead, but I'm not going to do anything about it. It's not that. We have to work for it. We have to endeavor. So, I can speak for something that I thought, I can never find the time for. For example, right? And then after doing it, repeatedly over a certain time, it comes to us naturally. So, for example, I don't know if this may have happened to, some of us at least. It happened to me. So when I first heard about chanting, even one round, I was thinking, I don't have time in my day to chant even for 10 minutes, right? Forget 16 rounds. But I thought I didn't even have 10 minutes to chant one round. But until that desperate want comes from within, of course, this is also by the prayers of devotees. When we want, when we desperately want something, that's when we start to change our priorities. And when we change our priorities and start to follow what we have told, what we have been told by the devotees, then, we will see some magic appear, like happen. So now if you see, right, like now we find the time to, what to speak of just 16 rounds. But sometimes we can do 32 rounds, 64 rounds, or whatever rounds we may do. That's more than even 16, right? So that it's the importance of prioritizing our what we want to do and what we want, where we want to go. So of course, I'm not there to do like more than 64 rounds or anything, but I'm just saying I know some people, some devotees that who actually do this, and they have they find the time. It's not that they have the time. We all have 24 hours in our life, but how we utilize those 24 hours is the difference. So this is how we understand that when we bring Krishna in the center of our lives, then Krishna becomes pleased, and then automatically the whatever lower tendencies that we may have or attachments that we may have, they start to fade. And this is again automatically. This is not by force. So that's the first point. And then how we should redirect our attachments. We don't have to stop what we're doing. If we have some wrong tendencies, we don't have to forcefully focus on those wrong tendencies and anarthas, but we have to focus on including more of the devotional service in our day-to-day life. And it doesn't have to be just service in the temple. Sometimes you can be also doing service in the home. Sometimes we're thinking, yes, I'm doing, when we go to temple and we do some service, we're thinking we're only doing that service. But service also means that, Krishna has entrusted your kids entrusted you in your kids in your care. So this is property of Krishna. When we are helping, Krishna's kids, develop the love for Krishna eventually and this is something where we don't preach to them, but they learn by showing them our example, right? So how we behave, we can only preach in our family with our behavior. So when we have this, when we are very conscious of what we do, this is also something that we talked about in the Sikshamrita class, the first class, that we have to be very conscious of what we do, how we're behaving, what we're trying to do. Because when we're present and conscious, that is, and knowing the instructions in the background of our minds, that is when we, start start not, degrading ourselves with our minds and emotions. We kind of start to hold back and respond, understanding those instructions. It's not that, our anarthas will go away, in a split second, but it's more of like understanding the instructions, meditate upon those instructions. which brings us to our second takeaway, that how following the instructions of our spiritual master, we can perfect our lives. So, hearing about Krishna really gives us the direction, but following the instructions of a guru and in Krishna really gives us that transformation, right? And this is important. Like hearing gives us a direction and following gives us the transformation. So our spiritual life begins with submission, not information. And initially, we can understand and have a lot of knowledge, but until we practice and follow and apply that in our lives, we will not be able to have any realizations. And when with just the knowledge, it will be just very dry. You can somehow, fulfill the ego of your intellect when you have this knowledge, but it doesn't give you that rasa, as I was saying. There's no connection with the Lord, or even connection with the objects of the Lord that we have, or people that the Lord has entrusted in our care. It's all very dry, and it just gives us like false ego. So basically, when we hear instructions from a spiritual master and when we decide to really follow those instructions at heart, we'll have this realization, right? So the reason why we have to follow these instructions is because in our present current state, our intelligence is conditioned and we cannot understand really what is good for us. But the guru's intelligence is very pure. So when the guru instructs, it is basically, Krishna really talking and speaking to us from the mouth of the guru. And we hear that, guru is a representative of Krishna. So again, this is because the guru, he doesn't manufacture his own ideas, but he really tries to deliver Krishna to us without any dilution. He gives us the knowledge that it is given to him by his guru, and by, that guru is speaking to, our guru in the disciplic succession. So it is the knowledge that comes from parampara. So many people, really hear. You probably see some of these people who hear for so many years, but there's no transformation in them. And this is because, again, hearing informs the mind, but following reforms the heart. And Prabhupada gives this analogy. I think it's in, I don't know, Nectar of Instruction. I think Nectar of Instruction. That and forgive me if that is not the right place. I know he gives it in some certain different places, but where I first read it was in, I think, Nectar of Instruction. That the doctor, if the doctor who gives this patient the medicine to cure the disease, if the patient doesn't follow exactly or take the directions exactly as what the doctor has prescribed for his cure or for the disease, that he has, or he takes it according to his or her own whims, by adjusting what is convenient for themselves, then it will not really cure the disease properly, right? So this is where, we understand that when we follow the guru's instructions as they are, it cures our disease of material attachment. So when we follow the instructions, it really also, not just cure the disease of material attachment, the root cause of all of this is our false ego. So when we submit to someone and follow, right, without putting ourselves in the center, it also purifies our false ego. And as I mentioned, that this is the main cause of our bondage to everything in this world. Because again, when we surrender and follow someone's instructions, like Guru's instructions and Krishna's instructions, we have to put our ego aside. And when we put our egos aside, that is when Krishna takes over and he takes our responsibility then. So here, Devahuti, Mother Devahuti, she followed Kapil Muni's instructions after hearing them submissively. She questioned first, then she heard, and then she followed and applied. And thus she perfected her life. We always hear this, Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yatha Devi Tatha Guru, Tasyete Kathita Hyartha Prakashante Mahatmanaha, which means only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. And this is from Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. So what this is saying basically is that, meaning of the life, meaning of our goal, all of this is revealed to us automatically. And when that happens, any obstacles that we may think that we have to perform devotional service properly, they all dissolve because the mercy of the Lord comes when we submissively hear and follow. So, let us try to follow even just, final takeaways like, let us try to just follow even one instruction very sincerely and genuinely. Either we can decide to chant very attentively, without distractions, at least. Our minds are always going to be distracted, but at least we can make sure that we don't have any distractions around us. So for this, you can also rise early and chant. So any one of these things, right? Avoid any offenses at the feet of a Vaishnava. So be conscious of your behavior towards a Vaishnava. It doesn't, someone maybe seemingly think, not, we think that, oh, they're senior devotees. How can they yell or, behave in this way? But we have to understand there's a, even in senior devotees, sometimes there is Krishna is working through them. He is doing this, he's making them an instrument to purify our ego. So this is why we say when we serve devotees, we also purify our false ego, because, we generally think that, oh, how does this devotee get so angry if he is, a senior devotee or she is a senior devotee? But there's a lot behind that person's motive. We don't understand. It's like that iceberg, right? We only see what's on the top, but there's a big mountain, underneath. There's a lot of things that goes on in the hearts of devotees. They could be, one is like one way to see it is that Krishna is trying to purify our false ego. Second way is to also understand that, they may be having so much on their plate. And when someone has so much on their plate, yes, they're happy and satisfied. It doesn't mean that they're not devotees. They're satisfied, but it's just the psychophysical nature kind of takes over sometimes. And, because of so much on their plate, you kind of have this, frustration that comes out because there's just so much. That doesn't mean the person themselves is bad or they're not pure devotees. It just means that we have to understand, we have to change our vision to understand that there is, so much services that they may be doing. Yes, it should make them happy, but when we're all practicing, it may not be there right away as that. So understanding and being conscious of these things really, help us serve the guru. Because, when we understand this part that, if our guru is there and watching us, how we're behaving to someone or what we're thinking even, would he be pleased with us? Would he like this, how we're feeling or thinking? So again, being conscious and present in whatever we do. So let's try to, do at least one of these things sincerely. And because of this, then, the hope is Krishna will take us seriously. Well, it's a hope, but we know that Krishna will take us seriously when we take our guru's instructions seriously. So hearing awakens the faith, instructions give direction, and following those instructions gives us Krishna's mercy and realization. And then, what else do we need once we have Krishna's mercy? Nothing else really matters, right? It's the blissful life with Krishna's mercy. So with that, let's remember these two things from Mother Devahuti and Kapil Muni's pastimes. Let's try to first redirect our attachment to Krishna by using everything that we have for his service and bringing Krishna in the center of our lives. And second is to really apply the instructions of our Guru Maharaj. With this, I would like to conclude for our discussion today. Again, thank you all for listening, and let's move on to our, if you have any corrections or anything else to add, or just share your reflections. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Haribol, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Prabhupada. I love that phrase, receiving instruction and hearing it informs our intellect, and following the instruction reforms our heart. Almost sounds like a Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, aphorism, something that can be imprinted in our hearts and we can try to follow it. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for sharing your reflection. I'm repeating what I've heard too, so it's beautiful. Thank you. And I think if we have nothing else, then we can end our call today. Thank you, everyone. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Guru Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.